Cutting through the noise. We're here with Shawn Nichols, our digital marketing director. How goes it, sir?
All good. Howdy, folks.
All good, all good. So, Shawn, I don't know if our viewers and listeners know this, but the podcast studio is actually also our office.
That is true. I think this is the first podcast we've done together.
I think it is, yeah. And we're revealing to our audience that all this time, just over my shoulder is my desk. I don't know if we've ever actually recorded what your desk looks like.
Now would not be the time to start.
You can explain it to the folks. What are we working with? A beautiful view of
a tree,
a pretty big tree, although it has a big orange like X on it. We're a little worried about the tree.
Oh, it's definitely coming through my window, much like those birds that keep flying into the window.
Indeed. So speaking of looking out windows, that might be a good segue into today's topic.
That was good.
Billboards, buses, and coasters are out-of-home traction channel today. I am really curious about out-of-home because it's something that in my previous life as the digital marketing director at the University of Montana, didn't have much experience with. But knowing your experience with HarperCollins over in the New York City, you've got a lot of experience with out-of-home and with purchasing out-of-home and even in some cases measuring the impact. So kind of wanted to start just with a helicopter view of maybe some of the campaigns that you worked on in your previous role at Harper. And if you could maybe walk us through one of those, if you have something on the top of your head here.
Yeah, I mean, in book publishing, obviously a big part of it is the book, and it's a physical product. And even with the rise in ebooks, you're still trying to get people into stores. And outdoor advertising, outdoor promotion kind of can be the most effective when you're getting people to take a physical action. And when you think about a place like New York City where people are walking, and they're seeing stuff, then it's, okay, well, I can then walk into the bookstore because I remember I just saw an ad for that book 3 or 4 times. And a big thing is the repetition. And the nice thing about outdoor is that it's always there. You're not hoping that when somebody lands on a site, the ad does show because you outbid somebody. It's, that bus, you're going to see that bus a lot. And same with billboards. And I remember one time we were working on a book. It had, great cover art. It was really striking, lots of colors. And we did a combination of buses and bus stops. Billboards tend to be a little bit expensive in New York. So that wasn't necessarily one of them. But so kind of in the area where you wait for the bus, on the side panels, they have ads. And so you're kind of seeing them while you're sitting there waiting for the bus or standing outside the little area waiting. Then the bus pulls up and there is the same ad on the side of the bus. So kind of getting that double impression right there.
Yeah.
And it's another thing, too, where you're standing on a street corner waiting to cross the street and the bus goes by and, you see that ad there. And, a lot of the ads are for movies. It's a lot of entertainment type things. But the more times you see that and you're walking down the street and then that's coupled with the display in a store, it kind of can have that big impact because it just pops in your head like, oh, yeah, where did I see that book? Oh, I remember I saw it on the bus. Or
yeah.
What did I see yesterday that I'm really interested in? I'm going to go in here. So it can kind of people can make that connection and take that action a little easier than seeing a bus ad, going online, doing something. So it has to be the right product. It has to be the right art.
Yeah.
You think about a bus that's barreling down Fifth Avenue, you really don't want to have a paragraph of text
right.
on the ad. But it's something that can really connect the dots for people. And I think in our heads, there's so much going on digitally, and when you're online, Facebook, wherever it is, there's a lot to consume. But sometimes a big, bold ad on the side of the bus can catch your attention.
Yeah. In thinking about the work we do at Pintler Group, a lot of our clients are coming to us without New York City billboard budgets, right? And when we're thinking about out of home here in Montana, sometimes we're talking about billboards, but other times we're talking about some local advertising out of home. Things like buses in Missoula are going to be very different than buses in Manhattan. What advice would you have for somebody who has maybe $5,000 a month to spend on advertising in terms of okay, we've heard you guys talking about a lot of different traction channels. Like, how much money should I allocate to out of home? Where should I start?
Well, the nice thing is that, just like when you're buying sort of display advertising and you're paying per impression, you can purchase for length and area based on the amount of eyeballs it's going to get. So, if you want to take a billboard that's in a, not as trafficked area, and you want to do it for 4 weeks, that's going to obviously be cheaper than, a billboard that's right downtown.
Yeah.
So
plenty of low traffic areas in Montana to choose from. So if you want the high line here, for those that don't know, I think the Washington Post ranked Glasgow, Montana as officially the middle of nowhere. It is the furthest in the continental U.S. you can get from a city of, I think it was 30,000 or more. So
you get one impression a month on a few highways.
That's right, and you pay about $3 for
exactly
the billboard.
I mean, I think the key is so you think about your campaign objective and how you're really gonna sort of qualify what happened. And I think it's easy just to take all $5,000, buy that billboard, and then move on. I think when you talk about local and outdoor, buying some remnant space in the local newspaper, if that is still a viable option. Combining that with, maybe a bus ad and a billboard, and sort of grouping that together over the course of a month. And then, am I looking to increase foot traffic in my store downtown? Or, I'm a coffee place and there's another coffee place and I want to put my billboard near theirs, or, that kind of strategy. And then say, okay, at the end of the month, I'm going to look back and did I have more foot traffic?
Yeah, I think that's smart, because a lot of the criticism of out of home is, maybe the cost per 1,000 impressions is somewhere on the lower end of advertising. I was just looking at adstage.com released some stats on CPM, so cost per 1,000 impressions, basically saying if you were to show your brand to 1,000 people, what would it cost? And their data says that television is roughly about $17 per 1,000 impressions. I've seen that number much higher for TV, but this was their stat. Facebook advertising is around $11, and billboards came in at $5.22. We might say as digital marketers, well, the $5 or the $11 on Facebook might be a better use of your advertising because of the targeting capabilities. If you want to only show it to people that like lacrosse, you can do that. But I think the point that you just made about competing coffee shops, like these are people who are on foot, maybe on bike, enjoying some lattes, and there's a new cafe opening up across the street or just around the corner. It might be something to test. And I think Cassie actually just made a video, which maybe we'll link to in the show notes, about measuring your out-of-home advertising. But it seems like billboards are here to stay. And I think it's because people at home have 4 devices and they can go online and they're inundated with ads on their news feed. But when you're in a car or when you're riding your bike, you can't really be texting. You can't really be on an iPad. And so your attention is focused to billboards. So they still do garner attention.
And I think, the key is, with everything that we talk about is how, each traction channel sort of integrates and helps the other. Nothing can be done in a silo. And I think, integrating this with other traction channels is just another impression. And when you need that many, it's not as flashy of impression. It's less trackable, and a lot of times it may just be brand awareness, but that's okay. And if you think about something we've been talking about and doing recently is some geofencing advertising on Facebook. And so there's a conference in town, and we just want to show some Facebook ads to people when they're in that conference hotel. It's an awareness thing. Maybe we get a few likes out of it, but really kind of showcasing the brand. Well, at the same time, you could buy a billboard right outside that hotel, and it's a very similar practice.
Right.
It just, you're just not measuring clicks or engagements, but it's there. And so while you can't necessarily put a billboard so that somebody who likes lacrosse sees it, it's from a geographic and demographic standpoint, you can be that way. And if you're trying to get somebody to, go into your coffee place, maybe you pick it so it's at a stoplight.
Right.
And it's just, you can be strategic that way. The same way that if you're doing radio advertising, which, is out of home as in it's not digital, maybe you're running your ads you're not going to run your ad to get somebody in a coffee shop at, 11 o'clock on the radio. Like
Right.
You're going to do it, and while it's more expensive, you're going to do it in drive time radio.
Mm-hmm.
So it's about location placement and really the look and feel of the ad, because you don't have the opportunity to optimize the creative. So that's kind of a key piece that really needs to be paid attention to.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of optimizing, I was reading about Dunkin' Donuts has some billboards now, and this is probably more to do with the billboard company, that on hot days, so when the temperature reaches a certain degree, it will show you the iced coffee drinks. Cold days, you're going for the hot chocolate coffees. I thought that was kind of neat that they're basically personalizing billboards based on temperature.
Do you think it's a digital screen, or do you think a guy just runs up there on a hot day and just plasters a new one up there with the roller?
Just starts painting and spray paint cans.
He just has to sit there, and when the temperature changes, he gets an alert, and there he goes.
That's a hardworking guy.
I think that he definitely always needs an iced coffee after doing that.
Guy, he just runs on Dunkin', I guess. So let's talk a little bit about the trend of billboards. So if I ask Shawn, how many billboards do you think there are in the entire country?
The entire country?
Yeah, and this stat, I think this includes, well, hold on. I'm going to tell you, the stat comes from Statista.com, and it basically gave the last 4 years. So billboards in the United States.
Well, I can see about 12 from here. So let's say 1.2 million.
A little bit lower. We're at 342,000.
All right. Well,
So
I got excited.
yeah, I mean, Montana is tough to gauge because there's just so much open space. But 342,000. That's a slight increase from last year, 2018. 2018 and 2019 are both lower than 2017 and 2016. So a slight decrease, but that was actually more than I would have expected.
Yeah.
If you divide that by the number of, by state, and it usually, according to Statista, accounts for about 7% of a brand's ad spend, which I thought was also kind of low.
Yeah, I think in a lot of cases, it is actually rather inexpensive. I mean,
Yeah.
you take big metropolis out of it, and it's not the most expensive thing, and it's not like there's really a minimum. Like you can get it. It's a long thing, so it's. I'm not surprised from that percentage standpoint, but the other reason that they're not going anywhere is, what else are you going to put in that space? It's not like it's going to come down so you can put a house there. Like it's just
Right.
It's up there, it's high, it's just in air. So I mean,
Yeah.
it's not like it's taking real estate from something else.
And people's attention is still there.
Right.
You can still get a solid impression on a billboard.
Right.
Do you think billboard companies are nervous about self-driving cars at all? That people are going to be, just putting on autopilot and checking their phones?
I'm nervous about self-driving cars.
Just
it has nothing to do with billboards.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
It's far enough out.
Yeah, and I think too, I mean, I'm just as likely to see a billboard when I'm walking or biking or whatever than I am in a car.
Right.
So, yeah, I'm just scared of self-driving cars, period.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
Somebody who's just getting started and says, well, okay, I want to get started with, maybe I want to get a billboard, but don't know where to start. We recently put up some billboards for one of our clients, Montana Scouts, here in Montana, and went through that process. So can you just quickly walk through the process for somebody that says, hey, I want to test the waters of billboards. What might I be expected to pay, and what are my first steps?
Yeah, so, the billboards we did here, we worked with Lamar Advertising, which is one of the 2 or 3 bigger billboard firms in the country. Based on your area, you can go, you look at any billboard, it says who the company is. But, kind of reach out to them and said, okay, so, we're looking to get some billboards up for about a month, and we're looking in 3 different cities. So we want to look at Missoula, we want to look at Billings, we want to look at Butte. And what they do is they'll go back, they'll pull the inventory, and kind of send you this packet that has the coordinates of where it is. It has the cross streets. They'll also send you pictures of what the billboard looks like, as well as pictures of the area around it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, kind of mixing old school marketing with new age technology. You're then going to go onto Google Earth and kind of take a look.
To street view it.
Yeah. And
Can I interrupt you real quick?
Yeah.
You chose those 3 cities, and it wasn't just sort of throwing a dart at a map of Montana. Like, what were some of the reasons for those 3 cities?
It was just the type of people that we were trying to reach,
Mm-hmm.
in the sense that the action we were looking to get was to drive interest in a certain product or service in those areas. We identified that as an area that we weren't reaching, or that maybe there was an untapped market.
Yeah.
And we were doing stuff digitally and things like that, but it was like, okay, so here's a growth area, and so these other traction channels aren't growing it as high, so let's try that.
Yeah, I think that's a really important piece to deciding, all right, where am we going to spend this money?
Right.
So, great.
Yeah, so we got all the information, and along with that proposal, it's going to tell you the estimated monthly impressions, which they base on population, obviously traffic. They can kind of get those numbers, and from there, it's then just really, picking which ones you think are most effective, and they can throw 6 at you, and each one's going to cost, let's say, $500 a month. So you look at your budget, and it's like, okay, so I could do 3 at $500 a month in Billings. Probably more optimal than doing 1 in Missoula, 1 in Billings, and 1 in Butte, if that's your budget, just because it's the repetition type thing. Or is it, I just want to put all my money in front of 1 and have that run for 3 months as opposed to 1. So it's just kind of really thinking about what the outcome is, what the timeline is. And a lot of it is just, gut feelings in terms of locations. This one we were working on, it was up in Billings, and it wasn't, we weren't able to go scope it out in person, but we got some feedback from somebody that was up there that there was one that just wasn't a great area. The placement wasn't great. It was across from, I think, a questionable business front. So, that's kind of good feedback to have, because you have to remember, I mean, this is your brand, and while people know it's a billboard and it's not associated with the casino next door, it can kind of blend together sometimes.
Yeah, it's why you can't get a Tesla in like a strip mall.
Exactly. Well, I mean, maybe.
Maybe you could. No, I think that's really great. Were there a minimum amount that Lamar, did you have to get 3, or could
no? You could
get 1 if you wanted to.
Yeah, you could get 1. The minimum, they wanted you to do a month. I mean, you think about it, it's the labor of them putting it up. It's not like they're gonna change it out every day. They're not Duncan. But
right.
I think there's a setup fee you have to pay for the actual printing of the billboard. That's a one-time thing.
Sure.
And then they install it. But yeah, a month. And if you think about it, like you want that repetition. You think about a month, and somebody drives to work 5 times a week, and so all of a sudden you have 20 times 2 impressions maybe for that billboard. That's pretty solid as opposed to just a week.
Did you have a positive experience working with Lamar?
Yeah, it was good. I think, it's hard when we got to the creative standpoint, the design, that was kind of the only place where there were any real challenges. Just because when you're creating something that is going to be printed and you're talking to the person that's doing the printing, and there's all sorts of, as you can imagine, specs in terms of margins here, margins there.
Yeah.
It can get a little lost in translation when you're dealing with, we have a designer, I have the design, I'm talking to an ad rep who has his design people who have the printer, and so it got a little...
We're working with the client.
Right, and so it got a little convoluted and a lot of back and forth when it turned out it was right the way it was, but
right.
Overall I think it was positive, and we got the locations that we wanted.
Cool.
Which was key, and they came back and sent us some photos. They had people on the ground to get photos of them live, which was good.
We like to move fast at Pintler Group. It's something we talk a lot about. It's one of our superpowers. We're agile. When it comes to out of home, our core value of embracing failure and taking risk, we sort of have to pump the brakes on a little bit, and I think that's true of any brand that's going to throw a billboard up. You really, like you said, the specs are key. I remember just, looking at the billboard graphic from our designer 50 times, even though it was probably 5 total words. Just like, okay, we don't want to be that like Reddit post. Check out this billboard that has this giant typo, and where I think when you're using display ads and you're showing 1,000 impressions to somebody in Oklahoma City with some new ad copy that you're testing, the leash is really long. Like you can test it. You can test different words, different call to action buttons, different landing pages, but the stakes are a little bit higher in out of home. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would agree, and I think not even just with typos or things like that. I mean, we've all been guilty of being like, oh man, did you see that billboard? How stupid looking is that? Like
Right.
I think the whereas you don't necessarily say, hey man, I saw this paid search ad the other day and that was a pretty lame punt. Like
They drove me to this landing page that was, right.
It's so I think the risk, and because there's going to be a lot of people seeing it.
Once it's up, it's up.
And even people that aren't interested, like they see it and then they're going to, it can become viral in nature for the wrong reasons.
Sure. Plenty of marketing firms have probably died at the billboard sword, I guess you could say. But many have flown to greatness.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a metaphor, if that's something people say. What word am I trying to find? Like flown to
risen to greatness.
Risen, yeah, maybe that's it. We talked earlier about Nebraska, ran a campaign that got some national press. There's nothing to do here on billboards, and they'd show, because we all might say, oh, Nebraska, like you got to drive through Nebraska, really? Or maybe
that's a state?
Yeah, that's a state. Like, there's nothing to do in Nebraska, and so they sort of embraced that and put some really fun billboards up that maybe we can link to. That got the New York Times, and some people in Nebraska weren't fans of the language, but it'll be curious to see a year from now their tourism statistics.
There's people in Nebraska?
Indeed there are.
Oh,
a flyover state, Shawn.
Flyover state. Well, and the nice thing is, I mean, you kind of want to take risks in that regard because it's a unique medium, and I think it's one that you're not going to be that serious. You want to be somewhat humorous. It's a chance to break out your puns. It's a chance to have, really colorful, creative, and
get some attention.
If you're going to do it and it's something that you need to catch somebody's eye, you might as well go big and bold with it.
Totally.
As opposed to a very prescriptive, Facebook ad or email or things like that. Like you're just trying to make a really good first impression.
Mm-hmm. So we've talked about buses. We've talked about billboards. Have we talked about buses enough?
I think we talked about buses enough.
I mean, buses are
buses are the same way. It's you're seeing that ad day after day, and every day when I'm driving to work, I see the same bus who has the same real estate ad, and it's the same two faces. It's funny because I'm friends with those people. It
Right.
makes it a lot more odd. But hey, I saw you this morning. You did? Yeah, on a bus.
On a bus.
But I think it's and it's a moving ad. Like it's be cool if you could follow people around with bus ads. That'd be pretty cool.
Personalize it based on.
No, just pay the bus driver to follow a few cars around.
Oh yeah, this bus followed me everywhere today. It's parked in front of my house. That might be like account-based marketing. The CMO of Company X, we're going to follow around. Not recommended by Pimley Group.
That's unconventional PR.
Unconventional PR, or unconventional, like misdemeanor, I guess you could say.
Restraining order.
Right. Coasters.
1,000
coasters on stickermule.com. Cost you about $300. It's a lot of coasters.
That is a lot of coasters, especially if you're just using them for yourself. Now, the thing I like about coasters is, you sit down at a bar, for example. What is the first thing the bartender does?
Yeah,
throws down
throw
a coaster
your way.
Go to a restaurant. There's coasters, and it's just kind of a cool thing. Like, and you look at it, they throw it down, and then they go get you a drink, and while you're waiting, you are looking at the coaster. And the thing I like about it is it's just kind of like it's a leave behind. And so if you say you spend $300, you got 100 coasters. 1,000 coasters. Well, that's a lot. That is a lot of coasters.
Yeah.
So, you go downtown, you go to a few restaurants, go to a few bars, go to a few whatever, and bring some in. You could drop them on the bar, see what happens. You could hand them to the bartender and be like, hey, do you mind, holding on to these? I think, one time I was at this conference and, every day at 4:00 they had this sort of happy hour in the hotel lounge. So, they had people having drinks, they had people, eating appetizers, kind of chatting. And so we made